Okay, so I'm just going to go through my loss from last week. I had a very good position, I think, which I blew. So I'm going to just go through it and see if, just show what the importance is of playing offensively and not defending. So the game starts off with, sorry, I'm end of the game here. Game starts off with the PIRC Robatsch defense with e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, knight f3, d6, bishop c4, knight f6, and knight c3. Now I did consider at this point knight g5. And with lines continuing such in my head, it was e6, d5, e takes d6, bishop takes d5, knight takes e5, queen takes d5, then queen e7, just to prevent the mate. And then if I castle, then I would imagine that black would push the c-pawn, and at least I'd have the knight defended still by the bishop, and I could fall back to along with diagonal perhaps, or somewhere like that, maybe just down to there with the queen. That was the line I considered, but I didn't really want to bring my queen out too early, so I just went on ahead with knight to c3. So the game continued with castle, knight takes e4, knight takes e4. That was a nice wee play by black there, I thought. Knight takes e4, knight takes e4, and then push the pawn. He did lose a tempo doing it, and it doesn't really get him anywhere. I think it was a bit of a flash move just to put me off guard a little bit, but it was nice. But it just leads to d3, d takes e4, bishop takes e4, e6, bishop e3. Now I personally thought that white looks a little bit ahead on development here, and I thought I've got not a bad position. I've got 3 pieces out and developed, whereas black has 2 pieces developed. So game continues then with knight c6, and then I just decide to recapture that. I thought that perhaps I could have played c3 here with the following continuations to create a good pawn structure and develop along normal lines with queen d2 and rook c1, but I decided against it and went with bishop takes c6, which destroys black pawn structure, and then with a couple of knight moves there, I've created this weakness on c6, and I can develop my knight over to c5 as the outpost. So that was the line I went along anyway. It meant I lost the bishop pair, but which actually ended up being a bit tricky towards the end. But the game continues then with queen d2, rook e8, bishop to h6. I was hoping for an exchange there, but black played bishop to h8, c3, b7, knight g5. I was trying to get a little bit of a mating trap going here, but I just couldn't see it. I spent quite a lot of time trying to work out what it would be. I suppose queen to f4 wouldn't have been a bad move. f6. I didn't get time to do it, you see, so I've got knight to e4 and then e5, and then just continued on with the idea I had to get my knight up onto that outpost. Blocking is the advance of his c-pawns now, which are doubled. Lock his knight there because he can't get on to a6 because it's defended by the knight, and I thought I still here at this point thought I had an alright position. So black plays rook b8. Now I see here at this point, I'm thinking in my mind, because the king is blocked onto the square by the bishop cutting off those dark squares, if I could simply have brought my knight to a4 and then pushed my pawn to here, and then I could have swung my queen across to have check, then brought my knight back to this square first and then put in the check. Then the only way he can defend that check is with rook, which he loses, and if he brings his queen down, then the knight on c3 will capture that. And I thought that was probably the way to do it to win, and that was the line I should have continued on. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that was the line I was thinking about in my head at this point, and I should have continued along that route, but I decided against it and played rook on a to e1, and then black obviously sees the threat that I was thinking about in my own head and plays king to f7 to try and give me some trouble on that king side and see if I will move that bishop. which in the end I do, and I think it was the downfall. I think in order for me to lose that bishop being trapped in, black must push his g pawn to trap my bishop, and then the king obviously comes on to g6 and recaptures. But the idea should have really been, in fact, is to push the f4 pawn. I think would have been the more to prevent the g pawn advancing. I think that would have been the way to go. And if, for example, e takes f, then I could simply have recaptured back with the rook, and then exchange off in the rooks, perhaps with on the e file with the queen, then arriving down on the e1. And I think that would have been definitely the way to play, but I didn't. So I brought my bishop back to e3, and I think that was the incorrect move. I honestly also thought about the rook lift of rook to e3, but I thought the kingside pawns were looking a little menacing, and plus with the king off g8, then g5 wins the bishop. So they were the kind of the thoughts that were going through my head, and I think at that point in the game I blundered. Bishop to e3 I think is a blunder, because it leads to the following continuation: e4, queen c2, f5, bishop c1, bishop to f6, rook to e3, queen d5, b3, bishop to e7, f4, bishop c5, d takes c5, queen takes c5, and c4. I'm not going to go through how the game ends, but it goes along the lines of a6, rook d1, rook on e to d8, h3, rook to d6, rook takes d6, queen takes d6, king h2, queen takes f4, g3, queen d6, c5, queen e6, bishop to b2, rook to c8, and queen to c3, and then as soon as black plays rook to g8, the pawn structure there is preventing the mate. Obviously the pawn structure there is going to be devastating, and there's nothing much we can do to stop about it, and I almost need to use my rook, which is an important piece to prevent anything coming down that line. So that was the end of it. If anybody can think of any continuations, I was hoping to go up and win. I've been doing quite a lot of work, and if you want to evaluate that game or tell me what you think about that game or where I went wrong, then please feel free to. So I'll be posting my game tomorrow as well, and maybe it'll be a win. So thanks for tuning in. All the best.